Welcome back to the Jackson Neill Music Podcast here on Friday, September 14th, 2018. Thank you so much for tuning in on either SoundCloud, Stitcher, iTunes, or YouTube. You can check out the podcast in all of those great places. On today's episode, I talked with Dedrick Hendrix, the hip-hop writer who writes for Consequence of Sound, among other places, about his latest review for Eminem's Kamikaze album and what he thinks of the project. Let's just get started. So, what was your initial reaction to hearing Kamikaze?
So my initial reaction was, when you go in listening to an album, it's really important to not, especially as a writer, you can't go in expecting anything, because that's when you create already have your mind made up of how you want to hear an album. And I think that's what a lot of people did prior to this album with Revival. I think a lot of people did that. They already formed an opinion about the album before it even came out, seeing the track list and everything. So it was really, I was really excited that Eminem decided to drop it out of nowhere. So that excited me already. It's like, oh wow, Eminem new album. So yeah, I was excited. And then it starts off with The Ringer, obviously pretty much dissing everyone in the rap industry, except he did mention that, if you're not Kendrick, Big Sean, Joyner Lucas, and those guys, then you're not safe, pretty much. So it was just refreshing, to start off and hearing Eminem, kind of going back to what we know as Eminem, what puts him as one of the greatest of all time, one of the greatest MCs ever to grace the mic. And it was exciting to kind of hear, him revisit that sound and his aggression, because Eminem, when he's angry, that's the best that he puts out. And he even said it in his recent interview. I don't know if you've seen it yet, but he interviewed with Sway, who obviously is one of the, biggest radio personalities we have. He interviewed with Sway to kind of recap Kamikaze, and he even mentioned himself, he's even happier when he's angry.
I think I did see that quote. That was, I would never believe that from anybody else besides Eminem.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. And a lot of people will say that, but it was good to, hear it coming straight from his mouth. And that's kind of why I put that. I'm sure you read my review, and that's why I put it in there too, because you can kind of sense that it's even, more. He puts more energy into it, and there's a lot more content into it when he's angry, when he's talking to someone. And obviously, he's had a lot to be angry about in these last couple of years.
Yeah, he certainly has. And you mentioned over there, not having any preconceptions, I guess, going into this album, with Revival, it was such this big rollout where we had the Walk on Water, then the track listing, hearing about the features. Is not having any preconceptions, not having any ideas going into it. Do you think that's the reason why M made this one a surprise release?
Yeah, he mentioned that as well, because Sway asked him that. Again, it's good to hear that Eminem's answering these questions, but yeah, Eminem answered that question directly. He said himself that he feels like, when he released the track list for Revival, because if you remember, he released that track list months before the album came out. And there's a lot of artists that do that. A lot of artists do that today. They release the track list and everything, get everyone excited if there's any features on there or anything. And after Revival, obviously Eminem and a lot of other people were not happy. They were not happy with the album. They didn't feel like there was a lot of substance to it. So he even said himself, this album, gonna drop it on the world. Don't give them no time at all to form any kind of opinion. And you know what? You just listen to it, then you can go from there and form your own opinion. But at least you don't have time, to say, oh, this is going to be trash, before it even comes out. And you develop a mindset. You know what I mean? I was talking about this little bit ago. You just develop that mindset already before you even going in listening to it. Oh, it's going to be trash. Eminem is over the hill. And that's what a lot of people do. Unfortunately, that's what we do today in the social media era. A lot of people form the opinion. And that was one thing that he really wanted to accomplish by surprisingly dropping this album.
Mm-hmm. I'd have to agree with you on that 100%. When I saw the Revival track list, I was pretty excited because it was a lot of features that I would not have expected on an Eminem album. But like many other people, I left kind of disappointed, and I think it was because you saw all those features, you had this building up hype, so you created expectations that maybe were too lofty. As with Kamikaze, I woke up that next morning and saw it on my Apple Music and thought, wow, let me give this a listen. And there's really no expectations to fall short of.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of people, and I'm sure you'll get into this, But that's why a lot of people were on his radar to kind of get back to. He had a lot to get off his chest on this album, including, some of the mumble rappers in today's game, including Joe Budden, who obviously has one of the top podcasts in the world, including Machine Gun Kelly, that's obviously starting to maybe turning into a small rap beef that we have going. There's a lot of people he had to put out some aggression on, and he does just that and gets it all out there for everyone, his side of the story, because we've heard Joe Budden's side of the story. He's been talking about it on his podcast for the last year. We get it. All right. You didn't like Revival. We get it. You think that Eminem didn't push Slaughterhouse enough. We get it. But it was finally refreshing to hear Eminem come out himself and address everything that's been happening over the last couple of years.
Yeah, it's crazy. I was just about to ask you about what you thought about him, mentioning all these other rappers and all these other people in hip hop. Because certainly when I first heard the album, I didn't expect all this name dropping, especially in hip hop today. I feel like a lot of people are scared to mention other people by name, whereas Eminem just does it right on the track, word for word.
Yeah, I wasn't very surprised about him going back to Budden. That didn't surprise me at all because, like I said, Budden's been talking for a while. And Eminem's probably listening a little bit more to his opinion than other people. Obviously, as I mentioned, Slaughterhouse, obviously very close with Eminem, who was supposed to be pushing them. Obviously, Royce the 5'9" ended up, moving on, doing his own thing along with Eminem. So it didn't surprise me that he got back at Joe Budden. It did surprise me a little bit, though, that he went that far attacking today's, generation of mumble rappers. I wasn't expecting that because there's so many different, what shows how Eminem thinks of himself and where he puts himself. He doesn't care if any of them come back to him and how many do because he's Eminem. He's above all. So that surprised me a little bit. And then Machine Gun Kelly, going back at him, I'm going to be quite honest with you. I just don't feel that Machine Gun Kelly is anywhere near Eminem's stature. If that makes any sense. So I was a little surprised that he went back at him just because I don't feel like he's on his level. So that kind of surprised me a little bit too. But the Joe Budden thing, I wasn't surprised at all. I knew at the very least attacking some shots at Joe Budden was coming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would also have to agree. I loved the him coming out of the other rappers. Although I will admit, yes, Machine Gun Kelly is nowhere near Eminem's level, but I have enjoyed Machine Gun responding to Eminem because I know that it won't end well for him, but at least it's entertaining to see him try to respond.
Yeah, a lot of people are waiting for that. Obviously, if you read like comments on blogs and, I get all that stuff, emails and things like that. Everyone waiting, where's the Eminem response? Do you have any idea? And there may be one, there may not be. Machine Gun Kelly obviously did put out the Rap Devil diss, which is pretty good. I'm not gonna lie, it was pretty good, but a lot of people obviously, I just think as soon as you say Eminem diss, I think in today's day and age you'll get a lot of plays regardless. I do think it's a little, and I'm not gonna call anybody out, but it's the turnaround for that diss and video was a little soon. So I'm seeing a kind of Meek Mill Drake thing going on where somebody might have leaked the Machine Gun Kelly shots that Eminem threw on the album, that somebody may have gotten it to Machine Gun Kelly somehow, because the turnaround was a little quick, to be honest with you, for a video as well. So either he had this in the pipeline already lined up in case Eminem came back at him or what. But I do give him credit, though. It was a good diss, and it may get a response. But personally, I'm not sure that it was better than Eminem's small diss. He didn't even put out a full track. He just threw shots out of Machine Gun Kelly. Machine Gun Kelly dropped a full track. So yeah, it'll be exciting as hip hop fans. Yeah, you want to see Eminem come back. That's what makes it exciting. But me personally, I just don't think it's really necessary. I think Eminem's small shots towards Machine Gun Kelly were better than Machine Gun Kelly's track, to be honest with you. So that's just my opinion.
And obviously, Eminem isn't in a spot in his career where he has to respond to anyone at this point. Where if you're right, if those shots that he already sent are much better than Machine Gun Kelly did on an entire track, and there's even no reason for Eminem to even respond to that. So I just kind of want to wrap this up and ask you, where is the general spot in Eminem's discography where you would place this album? Where are you thinking this album falls into that?
Oh wow. I can't give you a exact number, but this is definitely the best album he's had since 2010 release Recovery. So I guess I would put it towards the middle, I guess. I mean, it's better than Relapse, it's better than Revival, it's better than both of those. I might even put it above Recovery, to be honest with you, but it's around there. It's towards the middle, not better, nowhere near better than Marshall Mathers LP, Eminem. So no, not even close. But it's around the middle. I put it, maybe top 5, top 6, maybe. But it's stretching it. But yeah, it's the best release we've had from him in almost the last decade. So you can't complain there. Eminem's moving. He's showing, and there's very few that can do what he did with this album. There's very few that are able at this day and age, as long as they've been in the game, to be this good. So you have to give him credit for that. So yeah, I would put it around the top 5, top 6, somewhere around there.
Thank you so much for doing the interview today. I really appreciated it.
Oh, no problem, man. Thanks for having me. I got a lot more reviews coming up for Consequence of Sound, so be sure to keep your eyes out, man. Thanks for having me to talk Eminem's new album, Kamikaze. Appreciate it.
Again, a big thank you to Dedrick for coming onto the podcast. Really, really enjoyed talking with him. Check out his stuff at DC Hendrix on Twitter. You can check out all of his content where he posts it there, as well as writing for Consequence of Sound. He has some new reviews coming out, so you guys better get tuned into that because he writes some really awesome ones. And with that, that'll wrap it up for this edition of the Jackson Neill Music Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in here on this Friday. Happy it's a Friday. Remember, you can check out this podcast as well as the Jackson Neill Sports Podcast, where I interview sports writers, the Anything Goes with Jackson Neill Podcast, where I interview musicians. All of these are on SoundCloud, Stitcher, iTunes, and YouTube in the same exact feed, so subscribe to whichever platform you want to listen on, or subscribe to multiple platforms. Check out the show notes in the description to find more content, links to everything, including Dedrick's article and his Twitter, my Twitter and Instagram as well, at JacksonNeill20 on both platforms. So check out in the description for all of those great things. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you all next time.